Step down. Oh, the darn thing turned off again. Let's find out if the controller works. No! Son of a gun! I have to load it again. And I've got a... Can't find the tissues. jobs. Just the one. Scania truck dealer. See what jobs. Russia. You can go into options. I prefer job length. Let's test this and put that all the way down there. No, it doesn't really about 13 tons of tobacco to Russia. And let's pour a cup of tea. No, I'm not. grab this cup of tea. Right, here's some David Icke audio talking about Trump and Clinton.
I've just turned the television off after watching Hillary Clinton's acceptance speech for the Democratic nomination for president. Apart from the clothes she was wearing and the fact that she's female, I could have been watching the Republican convention from a few days ago when Donald Trump made his acceptance speech for the Republican nomination. And when you watch the childlike nature of the people in the convention halls, it is no surprise whatsoever that we get the horrific politicians and political leaders that we do. They sit there, stand there, cheering in all the right places. Actually, if they did any research, all the wrong places. And they wave their placards. Here's one for Obama, here's one for Clinton, here's one for Trump, here's one for Trump for women, here's one for Clinton for women. And then you have the directors of the television coverage, which is supposed to be impartial, cutting up all these images just at the right point in the speech. And you see people, election after election, lied to by professional liars and professional psychopaths, telling them what they want to hear, knowing full well that whether Republican or Democrat, once the cheering dies down and someone's elected to office, whichever party it is, they will go on doing what their corporate and hidden hand masters tell them to do and fund them to do. And we have had some little chinks of light, a sign that some people are starting to get just some of it, in the supporters of Bernie Sanders and the way that they have rejected Hillary Clinton. And I'll come to that later. It's not anything as far as we need to go in understanding how it all works, but it's a start. And so we have, and I've been researching the Clintons since the mid-1990s. We have the personification of political mendacity and political corruption. We have someone whose political career, not least as Secretary of State under Obama, has been catastrophic for so many people, not least people with brown faces in the Middle East. We have the Clintons up to their neck in financial corruption. We have them with a stream of unexplained deaths of people over decades who, in some way or other, threatened their, it's not the right word, but I'll use it, reputation. And right up to this speech today, we have had email leaks showing that the establishment of the Democratic Party, not least led by the chairwoman now resigned because of it, Wasserman Schultz, systematically conspiring to undermine Bernie Sanders' campaign so that the chosen one, Clinton, can get in. And Clinton, as usual, with all these scandals decade after decade, says, I didn't know it was going on. But what does she then do? She appoints Wasserman Schultz as honorary head of her presidential election campaign. So right up to this speech, still more confirmation of Clinton's corruption, which is, in her case and her husband's case, genetic. And still, I have just watched thousands of people who will ludicrously persuade themselves they have a mind of their own, who have cheered someone with that record and want her to be president of the United States. We have seen Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Michelle Obama, Meryl Streep, clueless celebrities for Hillary.com, by the way. Chelsea Clinton, all of them standing up and eulogizing. Oh, Bill Clinton, of course, eulogizing over this godlike, goddess-like figure of sobriety, truth and honesty, when they all know what I know about, well, Meryl Streep apart, clueless celebrities for Hillary.com. They all know what I know about her background and the true nature of who she is. Hillary cares for children. Well, they should read books like Transformation of America by a former mind-controlled slave of the American military stroke government stroke intelligence community, and see, going way back decades, what Hillary Clinton was up to then what Bill Clinton was up to then. How close, fundamentally close, they are to the Bush family as supposed to be political opponents. They should read whistleblowers' books. They should read, if they want to know, my book from the mid-1990s, And the Truth Shall Set You Free, and The Biggest Secret that followed, and see how the Clintons and the Bushes were running drugs through the Mena airstrip in Arkansas during the Iran-Contra scandal, and when Bill Clinton was governor for Arkansas. They should see what a farce it all is. Are you listening, Merrill? What do you know about Hillary Clinton? Well, she's a woman and I'm a woman. What more do you need to know? Because the fact that she's a woman is irrelevant. It's not whether you're a man or a woman or black or white. It's the content of your character, as Martin Luther King said. And so this attempt to elect Hillary Clinton as president is not about electing the first woman president. It's about electing the first female asset of the hidden hand and the corporate networks that up to this point have been controlling the men in the White House. The outcome for women, the outcome for children, the outcome for America and the world is not going to change because Hillary Clinton's a woman. It would change if Hillary Clinton was a woman not connected to the hidden hand. But she is, and so nothing will change. She will, if we let her do it, and she becomes president, she will take the world into World War III with the West pitched against Russia, China. Because that's the plan. And she will do anything to advance the plan because she is completely and utterly controlled by those that direct the plan. She said in her speech just now how she'll take on the banks and take on the corporations. What? You mean the ones funding her to a limitless amount so that she will become president to represent their interests? Hillary, Hillary. It's extraordinary. And Bill Clinton and Chelsea Clinton talking about their wonderful family life and Bill Clinton and their life together. Anyone even fractionally close to the Clintons who's done a modicum research into the Clintons knows that it's a marriage of convenience for both of them. They go off, do their own thing. But, oh no, it's the Clintons. It's a marriage of convenience. That's all it is. I mean, Bill will be rubbing his hands now about all the money they can make selling privilege to the highest bidder if they get in the White House. Just like they did before when he was in. What a joke it all is. And then we come to Trump. I watched Trump's speech at the Republican convention. And I watched the crowd with the banners and the sticks. And I watched how they reacted to him. Exactly the same as people just reacted to Hillary Clinton. When I was watching the Trump speech last week, I looked at the scene and it could have been Barack Obama when he was accepting the nomination of the Democrats. They call them different names, Republican Democrats, but the mentality of the crowd are just the same. They are looking for a Messiah to save them. And last time with Obama, it was the first black president. Oh, Messiah. Well, that worked out well for black people, didn't it? What's he done for them? Nothing. And now we're talking about the first woman president with Clinton. What will she do for women? The same. Because they're both serving not women, not black people, but their hidden hand. And so I was looking at Trump, and he was going to make America great again. He was going to take on corporate interests. Why? Because that's what people want to hear, just like with Clinton. Both of them and their running mates, staunch supporters of Israel. That's a gimme. You don't get in if you don't do that, because the hidden hand won't allow it. And he was going to get rid of ISIS very quickly. Sorry about the sunlight, we're not liking it. How was he going to do that? He never said. And he's either not going to do it, or in his barely one-dimensional mind, he's going to carpet bomb the whole of the Middle East, shooting in all directions. He was going to stop trade agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which are really bad for people, but great for corporations. And then he takes on a running mate, Mike Pence, who is for all of it, who stands for everything that Trump says he doesn't stand for. Same with this Tim Kaine, this running mate of Clinton. His record: support banking regulation, support the trade agreements. All the things she's saying, oh no, we'll take that on. And the whole thing is so unbelievably simple, and it works every time. You tell people what they want to hear to get elected, and then you do what you were always going to do, because that's what the hidden hand and your corporate masters are insisting that you do in return for their support. But like I say, there were some good signs in the way that Bernie Sanders supporters made their feelings very clear, in the way that their campaign was systematically undermined by the very Democratic Party establishment that's supposed to have been there to ensure a fair election. They don't get the big picture clearly, or they wouldn't have been at the Democratic convention at all, because they'd realised that politics is never going to change anything, because it's not meant to, it's not what it's there for. But at least they're starting to see the scale of corruption on one level behind politics and within the political parties, to ensure that the chosen ones of the hidden hand are the ones that run for president, and not some maverick who could cause a problem. And they either accept that and carry on as before in the Democratic Party, or they realise that politics is irrelevant and start trying to make a difference in another way, like organising people outside of politics to challenge their political impositions. There are, after all, a handful of people running politics, compared with more than 300 million people in America, more than 7 billion people in the world. They can only have the power to do what they do because we give it to them. And I must say, I have been desperately disappointed with Bernie Sanders. He was a man, what is he, 74? What's to gain anymore, Bernie, by falling in line with the establishment? What's to gain? He had confirmation through these emails, he must have known before anyway, that there was a concerted campaign and conspiracy to stop him getting the nomination, no matter what support he had, because Hillary was the chosen one. And then it has all this confirmation with the emails, like I say. And even then, he falls into line, plays the game, says support Hillary Clinton, announces her nomination, etc. in the hall. You know, the point has come, if anything's going to change, where people have to start doing what is right and stop doing what they think is the done thing. Bernie Sanders had the opportunity to make a fantastic difference. He could have said, having looked at the choices we've got, there is no choice in my opinion. So therefore I cannot nominate Hillary Clinton. And I cannot support Donald Trump. So I'm stepping back and letting people decide for themselves. That would have made a massive, massive statement in terms of showing the system for what it is, corrupt, and what political choice is for what it is, an illusion. But instead, he plays the game and leaves it to his supporters to try to make those points. So I hope the penny's starting to drop with more and more people. I kind of know it is going around Australia. I can feel that happening here and in other places. The understanding that politics is going to change anything. It's not going to change anything. We need to come together as people outside the political system and start refusing to cooperate with it.
Okay, here's the start of the David Icke podcast trailer from just after Brexit.
Hello and welcome to this videocast and podcast for subscribers to davidicke.com. Well, I've had worse days. Yes! What a day when people ignored the entirety of the political establishment and said, we'll decide what happens, not what you tell us. What a day. And of course this is not the end, it's the start, because these people aren't going to go quietly.
And the latest.
Hello and welcome to this videocast and podcast for subscribers to davidicke.com. Well, the first thing virtually that I posted immediately after the referendum result in June, when 17.4 million people voted to leave the EU, I said that this was just the beginning, that the political class and the financial class, in effect, and the hidden hand behind them, though most of them don't even realise that, were not going to go quietly. They were not going to let Britain leave the EU without a hell of a fight. And so it's proving. But there are some good things to this and the events of this week. And that is that it is beginning to dawn on ever more people that there is a conspiracy for the few to control and dictate to the many. I've been pointing this out and providing fine detail for over a quarter of a century, taken endless ridicule and dismissal as a result, and untold abuse. And so it was nice to read in the Daily Mail today, in a comment column, the following. The truth is that this judgment, which I'll come to shortly to throw a spanner in the works of Brexit, plays with fire, fanning the feeling not just in Britain and Europe, but also among Donald Trump's supporters in America, that Western public life is becoming a conspiracy. The word is being used in the mainstream. I thought they were only theories. Is becoming a conspiracy of tightly knit, self-serving establishment elites against the public. Well, the only thing wrong with that is it's not becoming. It always has been. The fact is that it's now becoming so blatant that it's becoming more and more obvious to everyone. Well, everyone with a brain on active duty. And what that judgment is referring to there is a legal challenge this week to the British government's right to trigger something called Article 50, to start the process of withdrawing Britain legally from the web of deceit, mendacity and manipulation that we call the European Union. 17.4 million people voted to leave the EU in June. That is the biggest vote for a political party or a proposition in British history. And the British Parliament voted to have that referendum by a margin of 6-1. Why? Because although there is a very significant majority of people in Parliament, in both the House of Commons, the elected and the unelected House of Lords, in favour of staying in the EU, they pretty much convinced themselves that having a referendum would not be a problem because, of course, the great unwashed would just vote to stay in. Well, we didn't. And that provided this massive shock to the political establishment. Now, having given the public a referendum to decide whether to stay in the EU, and then having them vote in such massive numbers to come out, it is simply the government's job now to do the will of the people and to trigger Article 50 and start the process. Apparently it's going to take about 2 years to get Britain out of the stranglehold of the EU, to take back power to make our own laws, to not be dictated to by unelected dark suit bureaucrats in Brussels that no one's ever heard of. But, like I say, it was never going to be easy because the political class that thinks it's all-knowing, when it is deeply ignorant, those who are not among the few who are knowingly manipulating events, they are awash with ignorance, with mendacity, and with the arrogance that they know best, and therefore the will of the people doesn't really matter. Unless, of course, it corresponds with what they think is what should be done, and then, they're all for democracy then. The British Prime Minister, Theresa May, at least in the words she spoke, was committed to triggering Article 50 early next year. Brexit means Brexit, she said. The will of the people must be followed, adhered to, respected. But this week there was a legal challenge in the High Court in London, led by a millionaire City of London fund manager called Gina Miller, and a few others I'll come to block the triggering by the government of Article 50 without a vote in Parliament. And of course, what Ms. Miller said, that she was doing this to protect parliamentary democracy. Yeah, okay. That actually is not what it's about. You see, there's a majority in the Houses of Parliament that does not want Britain to leave the EU. So by taking it back there and having the members of Parliament and unelected House of Lords decide what will and will not happen with regard to Brexit, despite 17.4 million people voting to come out and the majority in the referendum. That means that we are now in a situation, unless the government wins its appeal, where a majority of members of Parliament who want to stay in the EU now have enormous control over where Brexit goes from here. They can block it, they can delay it, they can water it down to the point where it's not Brexit at all, but just membership of the European Union under another name. And ideally, what they want to do is to bring about another second referendum. This is what happens when you go against the EU in a referendum. You've seen it all over Europe. They then have another referendum and they overturn the result of the first referendum, which they didn't like. And so now the will of the people in the referendum is now being usurped by Parliament and members of Parliament. And it is a situation that is frankly outrageous, disgusting, despicable, but in some ways a positive thing, because it is showing people in their face that the financial and political class couldn't give a damn about what they want. Because this country, like every other country, is not run for the people. It's run for the political and financial classes, and like I keep saying, the hidden hand networks that work through those classes. So we're asked to believe by this Gina Miller, who is a city fund manager and married to a city slicker who's even got a well-known nickname in the city as Mr. Hedge Fund. And they apparently run an investment operation which, according to reports, has portfolios worth around £100 million. So they're regular people, just like the rest of us. And she asks us to believe that this legal challenge to the government's right to trigger Brexit without a parliamentary vote is about process. It's not about politics. It's about politics, Gina, isn't it? And you know it. Here we have a lady who says that she was so horrified by the Brexit vote that it made her, quote, physically sick. So here we're being asked to believe that someone so vehemently in favour of staying in the EU has simply thrown this spanner in the works of the Brexit process, simply because she believes in parliamentary democracy and she wants to protect it. That, Gina, would be the parliamentary democracy that your fantastic, what could be wrong with it, EU, has spent the last more than 40 years destroying, with more and more laws being made by dark suit bureaucrats outside of this country, never mind outside of Parliament. This is the EU that is a bureaucratic tyranny, taking away and deleting year on year on year the right of sovereign parliaments to make decisions about what happens in their country. But you, a supporter of the European Union in the extreme, and all that, I've only done this to throw the Brexit process into turmoil because you believe in parliamentary democracy. They really do think we're all frickin' idiots. But as they found in the referendum, we ain't. This is a quote from Gina Miller. who was only doing it to protect the process. I felt physically sick, she said, when the referendum result came through, because I thought, I don't think people know the ramifications of this, of what's happened, and I felt really sorry that people had been tricked and fooled. You see, the financial and political classes, they know best, you see. So if you are just an ordinary person, just one of the great unwashed, then you really don't know anything about anything. You haven't worked out that Britain has lost control of its own country to the European Union. You haven't worked out all the European laws and regulations that are dictating, like I say, the fine detail of your life and what you can do and can't do. You haven't worked out that smaller companies are being crushed by the weight of EU regulation that's destroying their ability to function. You can't work that out. You have to leave it to those who know best, the city financiers and the politicians. You're just the man in the street, the woman in the street. What do you know? She goes on. We must not underestimate or forget the anger in Europe. Ooh, really, I'm terrified. About our vote. They're very angry that we've had this relationship, yet we still threaten the Union. Well, they should be angry then. Actually, there's a vast number of people in other European countries that want to do the same that Britain did and vote to come out. They're just not being given the chance because the political class that knows best is terrified that they might do the same. It's extraordinary. Now, let's have a look at these other people who were behind this legal challenge, in which judges decided that it had to go to Parliament for a vote before Article 50 could be triggered and could not just be done by the government carrying out the will of the people. The organisation behind this, or one of them, is called People's Challenge. Who are these people? It was set up in the summer by a guy called Graham Pigney, a British expatriate. He now lives in France. And Paul Cartwright, who is a Gibraltar national and works as an environmental officer for the Gibraltar government. Was Gibraltar in England or Scotland or Wales, Northern Ireland, the last time you lied? I don't believe it was. Mr. Pigney, originally from Fareham in Hampshire, is a semi-retired man and has lived in a wine-growing region of Carcassonne for 19 years. So one of the people behind this doesn't even live in the country and has lived in France for 19 years. And he wants to, in effect, let's be very open and sensible about it. He wants to block Brexit. That's what this is really all about. No, it's the process. Anyway, also backing this legal action that won this ruling this week is an organisation called Fair Deal for Expats Group. Well, expats. So they don't live in England either, or Britain. No. It includes among them dozens of Britons living abroad. Oh, anyone notice the theme here? And these include a British company director who lives in France, seems to be a popular place, a businessman who runs holiday rentals in Italy, and an English language teacher in Hamburg, Germany. I never saw Britain get a mention there. Mr. Pigney defended his decision to launch People's Challenge. He said, I happen to live in France, but that is inconsequential in the context of the constitutional crisis we are facing. The constitutional crisis that your challenge has just massively added to, by the way. And it's not inconsequential. he says here, what's at stake is nothing less than parliamentary sovereignty. We need to make sure we do not hand the sovereignty of the UK to a self-appointed government. Well, what do you mean the sovereignty that's being handed to, in effect, self-appointed bureaucrats for the last 40-odd years? And of course, it's not inconsequential that someone who starts a legal challenge affecting the vote of 17.4 million people actually has lived in another country for 19 years. Another guy in this group is a Brazilian-born hairdresser who no one seems to know much about, and that is the organisation with their 12 barristers, obviously money no object there, who have created a situation where the anti-EU majority, or the anti-leave the EU majority in Parliament, now potentially, unless this government appeal is successful, now have enormous control over the Brexit process, how fast it moves, the nature of what it is, etc. And that's the whole point of what has happened here. And the judgment was made by 3 judges, including one, the Lord Chief Justice, who actually is a co-founder of an organisation dedicated to integrating laws all over Europe into one EU group of laws that are basically all the same. In other words, centralising control in Europe via the legal system. And, you know, in the last 24 hours, day or two, since this judgment was made, we have seen so many extraordinarily ludicrous things said, like it's just about the process, not politics. And another one is, I saw that the judgment was made by an independent judiciary, acting above politics and outside politics. You know the greatest threat to humankind. It's frickin' naivety. The idea that the judiciary is above politics and the judiciary is independent is absolutely ludicrous. Like I say, what it's really about is blocking Brexit or watering it down to the point where it ain't Brexit at all. And that's beyond all the bullshit. That's exactly what this is about. And it's sickening to me anyway to see this group who call themselves progressives, word that came out of America, basically those of the left and Greens, all these people call themselves liberals, to see them lining up alongside and cheering when they came out of the High Court, the city millionaires, and lining up alongside the financial and political class in demanding, in effect, that the will of the people is not adhered to and we stay in the EU. Here we have these so-called, because that's what they are, so-called progressives, who will go on marches and protest against the extremes of the financial class and the political class that they don't agree with, or that part of the political class they don't agree with, while they now stand alongside of them to defend democracy by destroying it. They stand alongside people like Tony Blair A man who so loves parliamentary democracy that he lied to Parliament to justify a catastrophic war that has cost the lives of millions of people, both in Iraq and as a result of what that invasion of Iraq has done since in terms of the Middle East. A man who didn't even keep his own cabinet informed of what was going on in relation to the invasion of Iraq. These progressives, the British equivalent of the bullshitter in the United States, a classic fake progressive Michael Moore, are now standing shoulder to shoulder with people like Tony Blair. It is absolutely pathetic. And we're seeing, we are in a point now where things are coming to the surface, where we can't ignore them anymore. This is why you've got that quote from the Daily Mail using the word conspiracy of the political class against the people. It's becoming blatant. Look at the Clinton emails, how they've shown the collusion with the media, how they collude to block the candidates like Bernie Sanders that they don't want. How behind the scenes they're saying exactly the opposite to what they're saying in public. And how the whole system is so deeply, shockingly, unspeakably corrupt. And now we're having this put in our face again in Britain. The political class and that which was behind the political class, which, like I say, most of the political class doesn't even know that hidden hand exists. While it does its bidding, just like the progressives. Global warming, political correctness, stay in the EU. These are all desires of the hidden hand, which the progressives play out, thinking they're being progressive. It's hilarious, if he wants to tragic. You know, we've reached the point now where we, the people, have got to say enough. We've got to stop cooperating with this system of corrupt, mendacious control and stop handing our power to it. They have the power to dictate our lives because we give that power to them. How can their number dictate to millions of people, globally billions of people? They can't unless those millions and billions give their power away to them. We've got to stop it because it's becoming more blatant and therefore more obvious, because it's becoming more extreme. And the naivety of people, like I say, is extraordinary, as we're seeing this week. I saw this post. It's just an example of endless ones on social media just after this judgment was made, from a guy called Martin Cuff, whoever he is. One day we'll thank Gina Miller for saving the entire notion of British parliamentary democracy, he says. The British parliamentary democracy and sovereignty that has been systematically destroyed by the EU, which this lady clearly is desperate for us to stay in. And just before this vote, I read this story. It's about a guy called David Attenborough, famous filmmaker on nature. And he's part of the BBC establishment, which is very pro-EU, which is part of the political establishment, the financial establishment. They're just dog masks on the same face. And this is what the story said. David Attenborough risked enraging millions by claiming the public is not wise enough to have been given a say on Brexit. Note that theme. The public is not wise enough. We're the political classes. Only we know what's best. Could have been Gina Miller. The TV naturalist said the vote from 17.4 million British citizens to leave the EU had created a mess. Actually, it wasn't. But it's more of one now, thanks to the political class. And argued that the decision should have been left to MPs to vote on our behalf. Oh, David. I must send him the link to Naivety Anonymous. These were the people that voted to have a war in Iraq. These are the people that have made catastrophic decisions in relation to giving power away to the EU, that have made catastrophic decisions right across the board that have damaged life in Britain. Critics accuse the 90-year-old of being elitist. No, never, surely. And failing to recognise what the people want. But that doesn't matter. You're the great unwashed. You just do what we say. Pat you on the head when you agree with us. Smack you on the head when you don't. Referring to Donald Trump's rise in the US, Sir David said, "There's confusion, isn't there?" Well, I suspect that David Attenborough is rather often confused myself. There's confusion, isn't there, between populism and parliamentary democracy. I mean, that's why we're in the mess we are with Brexit, is it not? No. Do we really want to live by this kind of referendum? When it's fundamental to people's lives, yes. And he added, what we mean by parliamentary democracy is surely that we find someone we respect. Well, that's going to be bloody hard when it comes to MPs, isn't it? That we find someone that we respect, that we think is probably wiser than we are. Well, that's even more difficult. What's the man talking about? But this is the mindset of the political, financial, and media establishment. We think is probably wiser than we are, who is prepared to take the responsibility of pondering difficult things and then trust him or her to vote on our behalf. And a few people can't control the world. It's a piece of cake.
Frickin' hell, that plane's going slow. And I'm back in 10 with yet more alien isolation.